All right, welcome to today's edition of the Collector Car Podcast. It is Wednesday afternoon, almost evening. I'm very upset because I'm supposed to have my books today, and they're supposed to be here by 3 o'clock via FedEx, but they have failed me multiple times today. I've seen the FedEx van go down my street twice, and I ran out there to try to catch it with no luck. I call FedEx. You got to go through the phone tree, which is absolutely horrendous. And they said they had the wrong address. So I gave them the right address. And they said they corrected it. Still no word. So I call back at 5 p.m. and they still have the wrong address. I don't get it. Anyways, and they won't elevate it until it's the third attempt to try to deliver the books. So very frustrating because I'm supposed to have a handful of them at the Packard Museum tomorrow morning for the NAMM conference. And I told them I got to have them tonight. So stay tuned for next week where I will do an unboxing. If I get lucky, I keep looking out the window here. If I get lucky, they'll pull up while I'm editing this podcast, and I'll throw in the unboxing into this episode. But until then, this is a great episode with Dave Kinney. I did it a couple weeks ago, talking about some of the effects of the Bachman collection, some valuation updates, and be sure you stay until the end because that is where I give an update on the valuation trends, because at the time that we recorded this, they were being released the very next day. And so I do go through about 15 cars, including the big Ferraris, to kind of tell you what the valuation tools are saying those things are worth now after some pretty mega sales, not just at Mecum, but at Arms, Sotheby's, and Broad Arrow as well. As always, please support my sponsors. You're about to hear a couple commercials. They're great folks, super nice people. Please support them when possible, and let's get on to the interview. If you're a collector, you already understand stewardship, preserving what matters, planning ahead, and passing things on the right way. That's exactly how Peristyle Wealth approaches financial planning. As the Ferrari Club of America's official wealth management partner, they help avid collectors who value resilience and attention to detail. And the founder, John Suarez, is active in the community. I've judged one of his cars before, and I see him at events all over the country. To learn more, go to peristylwealth.com. Peristyle Wealth advisory services offered through New Edge Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor.
Every garage is a mirror of the mind that builds it. The garage becomes a quiet dialogue between who you are and what you craft. A garage is where work becomes meditation and solace, where mechanical truth becomes mental clarity. Some people go to offices, some go to mountains, others go to garages. At Metron Garage, we build for people who do all three. Give us a call to get started.
If you own a collector car, you already know it deserves more than a standard insurance policy. NCM Insurance specializes in agreed value coverage designed specifically for classic, collector, and enthusiast vehicles. From weekend drivers to serious collectors, they understand how these cars are used, stored, and protected. To learn more about protecting your collector car the right way, visit ncminsurance.com. Coverage built for the cars you care about. Every car in your garage tells a story, where it's been, how it's been maintained, and what makes it truly yours. Carport gives you a simple digital garage to document, organize, and manage your vehicles all in one place. Track service history, store important records, and keep your collection dialed in with confidence. From your daily driver to your dream car, Carport keeps everything in order so you're always ready for the road. And best of all, it's free to use and it's 100% private. To learn more, go to carport.app. Welcome back to the Collector Car Podcast. Hey, it's Greg Stanley with a returning guest, Dave Kinney. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, man?
Good, good. Yeah, I saw you. Where did I see it? Amelia, probably,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, that was I didn't get to MOTA this year. I understand that was great. I got to the Arizona auctions. It's been a wild first quarter of 2026. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. And you know, you have a standing invitation to be on the podcast whenever to talk about these market trends. And it has been upside down. Now, as we record this, it sounds like the Hagerty valuation tools are being updated tomorrow. Is that correct?
Every quarter. So it'll be, hopefully they'll be up by tonight at midnight. I don't know that for a fact, but they'll be up tomorrow during the day sometime at least. And it's been a wild ride. I mean, Greg, it's just been crazy. I mean, everybody who's been following the market knows this. We have some insane prices that came out of both Kissimmee and Amelia, as well as Barrett Jackson and the RM sale in Phoenix at the same time. Bottom sale, everybody has been doing really, really well. Broad Arrow had their best sale ever, $110 million at Amelia. Everybody is on fire right now, and you look at the economy and you look at what's happening, and you think, yeah, it's probably a pretty mediocre time. But the collectors have spoken, and the high-end collectors and those people who are collecting the newer cars, pretty well defined as, let's just call it 2005 up, have been on a buying spree. So hard to define. I can tell you, we were talking just before you came on. Enzo prices are going up. Obviously, all kinds of Ferrari prices are having some big swings and some big changes. And we'll all know about that tomorrow. I can't drop the dime on what the exact dollar amounts are, but you'll have to go visit as soon as you see the podcast and see the changes.
Yeah, so I might do a follow-up 5 minutes. I don't know, hit some headlines or something because it
Sure.
has been really nuts. And it's so weird because I know a lot about the Bachman collection. I've talked about before. I've had Chris Mealy on who, really shepherded that with Mecum to come to market. And that was truly a one-off, but it has really impacted the Ferrari market, hasn't it?
And I mean, for those not aware of what's going on, there were some great cars from a collection that were oddball colors. I mean, it's the only way to describe them, but they worked for a lot of people. And boy, did they ever work on the resale market. They got incredible amounts of money for some of these cars. My headline was that fast food colored cars go for McDouble and triple and McTriple at Mecum, and that's about it. I mean, there were lots of yellow and red and blue, and yellow and blue, and kind of crazy colors, but they were great cars, and they did exceptionally well. So I mean, what do we know? We're just people who follow the market, but it's an exciting time to be doing that. Again, and Barrett Jackson had some, hits out of the park. RM had hits out of the park. Broad Arrow had hits out of the park. Even Bottoms, with a much smaller sale, had some really interesting cars that did well. I mean, there's always, I mean, okay, let me just put this caveat on. There are always going to be cars that get out of an auction for cheaper than they should have. And there's always going to be cars that get out for the same amount of money. And there's always cars that get out for higher than you expect. But this was a big, big time for higher than you expect. And of course, Mecum, I mean, they were just on fire in January.
Yeah, and I always said, whenever like for the Bachman cars, whenever those came up, those would be record shattering because it was such an unrepeatable collection. And you say that, and you're like, well, what would be the next unrepeatable collection? Because in that scenario, they were doing, I've spoken of it before, but they were doing tailor-made, customization before there was a program at Ferrari. They had custom luggage before Ferrari had a program. And so I don't know what's going to be that version in the future because just because you have custom colors and custom luggage, new Ferrari doesn't mean it's going to go through the roof like you might expect because those are programs that exist now. These cars were acquired when those weren't programs. It was all relationship built, and so
Yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of nervous nights at Ferrari when some dude comes in and yeah, he bought 11 cars before, but his 12th one he wants in a color combination that, the Ferrari people probably weren't real happy with at first. I think Bentley and Rolls-Royce learned this lesson. I know that Porsche has learned this lesson. Give the customer what he wants. And Ferrari, protecting the brand might say, well, I don't care what he wants. And this is just, me speculating. I don't care what he wants. We have a brand to protect. And I think that a lot of people now probably realize that this guy was ahead of his time. He wasn't an outlier. He was absolutely ahead of his time. And his family was, buying some cars that really made a statement. So good for everybody. Good for Meekum. Good for the heirs to the family. Good for the fun factor involved in all of it. And we can't ignore Bring a Trailer. They've been doing some great sales. Cars and Bids has been doing well. I mean, it's a time that where you look and what market you're in, you might see a depressed sale or a series of depressed sales, but in the overall market, the ones that are making headlines are just making huge headlines.
yeah, yeah, they are for sure. I know, I remember from Broad Arrow, they had that really cool, I forgot the color, Oslo blue or something, that Carrera GT that really went nuts because RM Sotheby's had the record, the weekend before for Carrera GT, and then it was, surpassed, which It's interesting because the RM, if I remember correctly, wasn't a crazy, paint the sample color. It was, I think it was a darker gray. I forgot what color it was, but
Yeah.
silver. But then, it's kind of like paint the sample stuff, whether it's Porsche, Ferrari, whoever, if it's a cool color, that's going to ring the bell, right?
Yeah, and if you keep in mind that, look, my perfect example is my sister needed help buying a new F-150, right? This is back in July. I'm going somewhere. Don't give me that look, Greg. I'm really going somewhere. What was on the lot? Red, white, and silver cars. And what are people mostly buying? Red, white, and especially silver cars. Well, Ford had like, I'm making this up, but there are 7 colors of silver that they had just for the F-150. And so when I drilled down, one of them is kind of a putty color. It was not silver at all. It's kind of a green with silver tint. And they had a blue color that was really, I would call it silverish blue or bluish silver or something like that. But they're making the colors, the names of the color have silver in them so people will accept them. And if you go against the grain in almost anything, I mean, you have a choice of watches, and you get the outlier, the custom watch. I think our recent history is showing that people love the thing that's predictable and the same, although arguably way different. So colors is one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is, obviously, back in the day, everybody was customizing engines. There'd be day two
Yeah.
builds on cars and stuff like that. I think the day two build is actually now a day one build, and people are doing it when they order. I
Yeah.
did find out, the fun fact that I found out, I don't think I discussed this with you, is if you buy 10 F-150s, 10 of them.
Oh, we talked about this.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. You can have whatever color you want. I think we should all get together. Greg, don't you need an F-150? I think I need one coming up soon. We're gonna get them in signal orange, or we'll get them in McLaren orange, or we'll get them in, some very definable color. Irish green. We'll get 10 Irish green F-150s. So we'll put tartan interiors on them. We'll be ahead of the market. What do you think?
I agree. I mentioned that to somebody and they said, "Oh, let's get Guards red." I'm like, "That's just another red. Don't
Yeah,
do that." Right? I'm
exactly. Yeah,
like, nobody's
right.
going to know that's a special color.
No, you definitely want to have something that jumps out, not another fire engine red that the fire marshal next door to my office here has that same color. So yeah, that's not working.
Yeah, so tell me what are some of the broad strokes? What do you think's driving this? Because obviously the economy's, yeah, we got the multiple wars going on right now.
Yeah.
People are nervous. I think obviously the generational shift is part of that. The cars that are really, it just seems like there's a lot of little factors that are kind of snowballing, would you say? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think boomers like me are stepping back in some ways. We're still the biggest part of the market, but not by a lot anymore. The millennials are stepping up, and a little bit of Generation X is as well, or a little bit more than a little bit right now. And I think that there's an awful lot of money out there. And I think that's basically what it comes down to. It's been a good few years for a lot of people, especially on the West Coast, and the left coasters and their AI and
Mm,
their new builds of all kinds of things that have been taking off. I think that's part of it, but I also think that there's more optimism under the just under the surf, which is churning. I think there's a little bit of optimism under the surf that keeps on rolling on. And I'm not necessarily always in that camp. I think that we look at our deficit and we look at a whole bunch of things, and the numbers that that we're spending in all kinds of situations, and it doesn't look good. But I think that for a personal basis, if you've got a good salary, you're selling your business, or you have a lot invested in your business, and you're able to partner with somebody, it's a great time. So, I think that our generation, my generation, I'm firmly in the boomers. We did a little bit of delayed gratification. I think that maybe the millennials are not delaying as much. Look, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, because there's a lot of people who are struggling, including in almost every demographic. But for the people who are making money, they're making lots of money right now.
mm, yeah. I would totally agree with you on that point for sure. Yeah, and it almost seems like I think it was Pebble Beach. I was talking to a collector, I think it was at Moto Miami, and we were talking about the next generation and stuff, and he had an interesting comment I haven't heard anyone say yet. He's like, I am not worried about the next generation. There'll be a big generation going after these cars. And I was like, well, how do you know that? He's like, well, just, I've been showing at Pebble Beach for 20 years. We've never had this number of young kids, taking photos, doing YouTube, doing all this kind of stuff. He's like, you know, the hobby's fine, is what he was saying. I'm like, well, maybe, some of that showing up in the slightly older, maybe 30s and 40s, like you said, with more disposable income or a different thought process on when and why and where and how to buy these special cars, where they're just getting them now, and you almost have to on some of these. It's just the prices are going so crazy.
Well, we as a generation were joiners. The boomers and the generation before the greatest generation. Basically, they were joiners. They would get together with their friends and they'd start a social club. They go to Kiwanis. They go to the Lions Club. They would get together and do things in big groups.
Mm.
Everyone now is busy, including all generations. And so the cars and coffee effect has had just this tremendous type of big change. People want to go show up, stay 2 hours and leave. They don't want to bring the lawn chair out. They don't want to make a year long or a day long or a week long commitment. They just want to come and have fun and go. And I think that that's rubbed off on every generation, the older generation and the younger generation. I think that that's the spontaneity of it. And I think that, like I learned about collector cars that were out of my demographic, cars from an earlier generation. I think that once a lot of the people who are buying the 2005 and the 2020 Ferrari or the 2015 Ferrari and stuff like that, once they realize that maybe that's the coolness factor for them now, but they really would love to have something from the 70s or 80s or maybe even 50s, because they think that's cool after they start collecting. I think that's what probably will propel some of the higher tier cars. Now, that being said, I'm worried about some of the 60s and 50s and even 70s and 80s, quote unquote classics, that might be left by the wayside. And with the newer collectors kind of not understanding. They understand the millennial cars. I mean, there are a lot of people who collect stuff from the cars from the 80s and 90s because it's cool, because that's what mom and dad had, that sort of thing, or even grandma now. But it's going to be interesting to see how collecting changes in the near future and in the long-term future. Keep in mind, I've been saying this for years. We're creating new collector cars every day.
Mm.
So, when I was a kid, there weren't that many collector cars, and now, even the manufacturers are building cars for collectors. Porsche, the first among them. Let's do a series of 13. Let's do a series of 17. Let's do 48 of them in this special color and cut it off at 48 worldwide. That's kind of building into that collector market.
It's interesting as you're talking about the next generation. I actually know a guy. He's a Porsche collector, not a huge one. He's just really getting into it. And what's interesting is he custom spec a GT3 Touring, like a
Hmm.
2014.
Right.
But here's where this car could really go through the roof, kind of like the Bachmann. And I say that because I can't remember the Porsche's Taylor division, what it's Sonder Special
Yes.
Wishes.
Right. Special issues.
And so they'll make like a satin, call it a satin gold or bronze. That's something that they currently make, some of the GT3 wheels and different things. He asked them to make a satin nickel, like a satin nickel finish for some of the trim pieces, and they had never done that before. And they said, but if you want to pay for the feasibility study, and if it works, we'll do it on your car. He did, and they did, and the car has that stuff on it. So it's the very first one, wasn't available, special, relationship, so that's an example of that where, whatever, 30 years from now, maybe, if he gets a little crazier with the colors, because this was like white with silver. But that was a one-off special handshake kind of deal with the factory, and so some of those things are still happening out there. It's just we're not aware of them, and maybe we won't be aware of them for a very long time, right?
Yeah, keep in mind you're absolutely right, and there's somebody out there right now who's doing boa constrictor skin for their whatever car, and all that sort of stuff. Some of these things don't pass the test of time. If I think about some of the cars that were fully customizable in the 70s and 80s. They're still
Yeah,
atrocious.
horrible.
I mean,
Yeah.
avocado green with avocado green with avocado green, the vinyl roof, the paint on the
Shag
outside, the
carpet.
interior. Yeah, and shag carpet. You're making a statement, but it's not exactly the same as the Bachmann cars, right? So I would be a little cautious with that, and if I was in the position to do that, I'd do it maybe exactly like your guy did, with some subtlety involved in it. But don't ever buy a car because it's going to be worthwhile as a collector. Buy a car because you love it. Buy a car that you think might be, by something you did to it, including taking really good care of it, keeping all the records, all that sort of stuff. Make it into a collector car. But you're always working against that sewer top that came loose on the car in front of you, that goes right into the hood of the car and destroys it. So you
Yeah.
can't, put all those eggs in one basket, I guess. It's a great concept. It's a working concept, and it's fun. But I really feel that with collector cars, all of it should be fun, and it should be, kind of a collaborative effort that you and your buddies, or you yourself, or whatever comes up with, and test it out on your buddies. There's nothing harder on a Porsche than a fellow Porsche owner. There's
Right.
nothing harder on a Ferrari than a fellow Ferrari owner. And I just love that. I was talking about that to somebody earlier. It's like, why is it human nature to say, well, I wouldn't have done that, a special nickel finish on my car? Well, so what? I mean, let's celebrate the fact this guy did it. That's what I always say about that. And
Right.
the overall thing that everybody has to keep in mind is that, in the end, the transportation value means a lot when you buy the car new. If you need to have it to use it, that's great. Get what you can afford, get what you have fun with, and take care of it, and you'll see what happens maybe at the end of the 10-year ownership or a 15-year ownership or whatever. I think that almost every car becomes a collector car if it's been taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about a couple cars here. Let's talk about the Enzo for a second. So I don't want you to tell me what's going to happen tomorrow, but so let's review that. We had the Bachmann all in was like 18 million, which was a crazy number.
Right.
I think,
Total outlier. Let's face it. Total outlier.
yeah, but you had the
Yeah.
orange one that earlier in the day was what, 11 million, 12 million, something like that.
I think that's right. We've had since then we've had a sale. I believe it's 7 million, if I'm not mistaken.
And then RM had the one at 10, the red one, which is
Right.
the least desirable color, ironically, for that model of Ferrari.
Well, most of them were red. That's
Yeah.
the reason why. So, yeah. I mean, we've noted all of that, but I will say, I mean, I'm going to temper it a little bit, because when prices go up fast, you know what happens on the downside. They tend to go down fast. Now, a lot of the cars are unicorn sales. They're not going to happen again. But when you see a number of cars going up, you know that that's a rising tide. So, when the Bachmann car is sold, I mean, I remember after getting my jaw off the floor, it was like, okay, but how's that going to affect the FXX? That's what I want to know. And it hasn't really
Yeah.
made
Very
made the
special.
knock on effect to a car that, don't want to get any trouble with anybody, but you could argue is a one step better than an Enzo for some people. So,
If you're
not,
not going to drive it like on the street, obviously,
yeah,
it- you
yeah.
know. Well,
Hmm.
so today, and I'll compare this to after tomorrow, but today, number one condition for Enzo, 4.9 million, up 1%. Now, obviously, that's going to go up. It probably double digit percent increase, maybe. And what's interesting is RM Sotheby's has one coming up for sale the end of April. The estimate, now this is in euros, 4.9 to 5.3 million, which seems
Yeah.
extremely low considering it is a silver car, Argento Nürburgring, one of nine with red interior. To me, is a stellar
I saw
color
that.
combo.
That's one of the. I mean, I'm not a silver guy, but if I would have ordered silver, I would love to have that, or electric blue interior. Personally, that would be fun. Yeah, they're going up in big percentages. I can tell you that. I don't have the numbers in front of me because those charts are off my desk right now,
No, that's
and I
fine.
and I don't want to access them because I'd be the last person accessing them until they got dumped in
Yeah.
thinking if there's a problem, it would be mine. But yeah, we can expect some big changes in a lot of the more recent Ferraris. There's a general downtrend on a lot of cars. And we've been doing this for a long, long time, ever since 2006. But again, we're seeing more and more of the cars in number four condition going down. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean they're all going down. It means that there's a lot of them that are, because no one wants to restore a car right now. Just
Yeah.
number one, the restoration shops are all full, with all very few exceptions. Number two, there a lot of them are quoting times. Yeah, we'll look at your car in a couple of years, that sort of thing. The costs have gone through the roof. I don't know if you bought anything that had tariffs on it. I bought three Timex watches from Japan because I love cheap, fun watches. They were $49 each. Well, when the tariffs hit, I don't know why, and I didn't do the figuring, but there was $50 each in tariffs.
Oh my
So
God.
my $150 watch buy for fun, became a $300 watch buy. I'll never figure out why. Whatever, no politics involved. I just think it's just insane to have that happen. And then they get here, and I realized, I've got a 40 millimeter watch. I'm comfortable with 38, 40, 42 millimeters. These things are like 23 millimeters. They're not even girls' watches. They're they're
Wow.
they're young
23.
girls' watches. I didn't even
Right.
think about that. But so I have these great, maybe Christmas gifts for my nieces or something like that, and that's about it. But everything has gone up, and I mean, some of the stuff is getting very, very hard to buy because people don't want to ship to the United States. A lot of small manufacturers are like, I have friends who've actually had stuff shipped internally in Europe, and then had their buddy put all the parts together and then send them out to them after they're done.
Yeah.
So it's a tough time to be restoring cars. So a lot of times the value of the three cars going down, and that's not on European and Asian cars. It's also on American cars, because the prices of everything have gone up, including the price of labor.
Yeah. So before we get off the Enzo real quick, give me your number. We're going to play a guessing game. So the Monaco sale, silver with red interior, estimate 4.9 to 5.3 euros, or yeah, euros. What do you think the hammer would be on that car? I'm going to guess. See, that's a tough one because you got the rare color. A red one in Arizona sold for all in like 10 million. But I feel like maybe this is the point that they slow down a little bit. I don't know. I'm going to guess 10.5.
In
10.5.
in dollars or euro.
We'll do euro. We'll do the hammer. Hammer. I don't even know what the exchange rate is right now, but
So I wrote it down so I wasn't influenced by you. I've got 7 million in euro.
7 million. All right. Well, we'll
We'll
see.
see. I
We'll
mean,
see.
look, I'm happy to be wrong. Okay. I don't own a euro. I don't have a horse. I mean, I don't own a euro. I do own about 200 euros. I don't own, I don't own an Enzo. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm happy for Enzo owners that they've gone up, but I don't see, the 10 million as sustainable right now, but I could be wrong, and I'm more than willing to change that. So we'll see.
Now, talk about if you would. Let's pick out two older cars that are iconic. Let's pull out a Duesenberg. It doesn't have to be an SJ, just Model J, and like the Gullwing 300 SL 55 Gullwing. Um, how do those play in today because of the market shift? I know they're iconic. I think there'll be a place for them forever. But have you seen anything in like cars like that where they're
Yeah.
iconic, they're blue chip, they hold in their value, they get a little soft in
Well,
general?
the 300 SLs, especially the Gullwings, had gotten soft, and they're firming up now. They're absolutely becoming more expensive in 2026 than they were in the first half of 2025. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of sales of 300 SLs right now. Mostly roadsters is what we saw in the last book. I had about, I'm going to say, 20 comps. And of the 20 comps that I was looking at, 19 of them were roadsters.
Right.
So the roadster market is much more vibrant right now than the Gullwing market. But I think those cars, they've been a blue chip investment forever. I think that they do attract all kinds of demographic. And I understand why, there's kind of a back and forth race between the Gullwings and the Roadsters, which one is more expensive. They kind of, sometimes it's 1,200,000 for the Roadster and 1,000,000 for the Gullwing, and then it's 1,300,000 for the Gullwing, and 1,000,001 for the Roadster, or 980 or whatever it is.
Right.
So they
Yeah.
do go back and forth quite a bit. So, but it's a stronger market now than it was even a year ago for the 300 SLs. Now the Duesenberg market, it stays vibrant. I'm wondering who wants to deal with older cars that need a restoration other than the top tier collectors. But that's been the same forever. So all my entire
Right.
lifetime, Duesenbergs have appealed to the top tier collectors. Duesenberg, uniquely an American, supercar, that's much more appealing in the States than it is in Europe by far, and much more understood in the United States. So it doesn't have a worldwide market like I mean, there is some market, but not much, like the Gullwing and the Roadster. That has an absolute worldwide market. It's as important a car in Europe as it is in Japan, as it is in Antarctica. So it's not that there's any 300 SLs in Antarctica. I'm just making my point. But I think that there's more runway for a 300 SL because of its usability. You
Yeah.
can get in a 300 SL in 2026, and you can drive it 500 miles if it's a good car, whatever. You can do that with a Duesenberg, but it's a little more challenging driving in traffic, stopping the car, shifting all those gears in that big a car is not any fun
Right.
after a while. But people do take them out and have fun on tours. And those Duesenberg guys who go out touring, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, they have mega fun every time they take them out. I've talked to people who've been out on the tours, and it's like my highlight of the year is going out with the Duesenberg guys. So
Yeah, that's so true. We actually were at a one of the vintage rallies, and they were at the same home base as the Duesenberg folks, and they're all over the place, which was a ton of fun watching them take off. What about the McLaren F1? Like, I know that's the next gen. It looks like it's actually really not that far from the GTO that just sold. I'm looking at number one condition before tomorrow's update at $28 million. That actually surprised me a little bit, 14.3%. The public sales, I think, have been around 20, lower 20. So this might incorporate a couple private sales. Um, do you think that's going to eclipse the GTO in the next 5 years?
boy, I'm really bad at predictions. I would say that there's a good chance, but I don't know whether that's because the GTO gets a little bit of shave or whether it's the McLaren keeps going up. I mean, you're right. Everybody says the McLaren F1 is the GTO of the next generation. I don't disagree with that at all. The problem is that there's only a few true number one McLarens right now. There will be more.
Right.
And more people will accept the fact that their McLaren has been restored, but everybody now wants the low miles original one, and as they should. And there are not all that many super low miles, super original ones that haven't been kind of screwed around with in some way. There are some, don't get me wrong, but the number is pretty high actually, but that's what everybody wants. Yeah, we've got a couple private sales with McLaren. I know that. I think my number for the McLaren, if you wanted to talk generic McLaren, I'd say it's 22, 23 million right now, something like that.
Right.
We did have the sale of the GTO this year. It was right-hand drive. It was not in an attractive color. It did have a replacement motor, from what I remember. It was a
Hmm.
good car, but not a great car. But that car didn't break the bank. It sold well. It sold to somebody who I understand was pursuing it before, and he's very happy with it. And he got a great car. Don't get me wrong; it's a great car, but it's not maybe the tippy top tier of GTOs. And so when we have a GTO, it's about the race car drivers. It's about the entire history of the car. It's about which races, not only the race car drivers, but which races it entered and which races it won. So all of that makes for a big difference in almost every race car, or just about every race car.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then I feel like this is an interesting car. Just two more cars for you, but interesting car, the Buick Grand National. So when I was writing my book, I that was the car that kind of held the muscle car torch for America for a number of years, right? And
Absolutely. It came at a time when there was nothing else. I mean, that was wandering in the desert, right?
yeah, and it's a car that's obviously stunning and beautiful car, and it's been appreciated for a long time. But I just feel like as we mostly by older guys, that, I think the next generation is slowly discovering it. And I'm curious to see what happens to that car. So it's 19.5% up versus a year ago for this most, the one that's out right now. So I'm just kind of want to keep an eye on that. Do you feel like that is has some runway on it because of the next generation who's into 90s and late 80s that, they're gravitating towards the car that
Well,
held the torch for such a long time?
I think you can just ask Kendrick Lamar and his not his
Well,
Grand
true.
National, but his GNX, and
Yeah.
that is the type of visibility that a car, being in the the one of the featured stars of a Super Bowl is a pretty big deal. And so I think that he gave it his stamp of approval as far as that goes. Not the Grand National, but the GNX, same body style, same
Right.
basic car. And from what I understand, the car was a Regal that he had painted as a GNX. But I think that right there is a statement that answers your question. That if there are people of that age that love that car, yeah, that's going to keep on going. One of the ones that is kind of surprising is I think the Typhoon should be doing a little better.
Yeah.
The two GMCs, the Cyclone and the Typhoon, I think they should be doing better. Now they're compact size, so they're kind of a little bit of an outlier. But they were faster than a 308 Ferrari at the time they came out, from what I remember, by not a substantial amount, but they were quicker and quite the car. And I think that when the story's written 10 years from now, or starts to be written more 10 years, I think the Cyclone and the Typhoon are going to probably make a difference.
I totally agree with you. And it's funny because Sean Morris, who runs Top Rank Imports, one of the biggest importers
Right.
of JDM cars, from Japan to the US, he's based in California. He gave me a nice quote for the book. And what was interesting is that was what he pined over when he was little. His dad was all about big block 442, GTOs and everything else. And then that Typhoon came out and it reset his expectations, as far as what a performance car could be. So much so that he got into the JDM business. It's funny that the Typhoon, an American car, was the one that had him become a JDM importer. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting
Yeah,
that he said that. But it kind of makes sense. I mean, we all, I think not all of us, but a lot of us imprint on one single model of car. And when we imprint on that, then that's kind of our baseline, and then we go from there. And when you think about it, it's not a big step from a Typhoon to a JDM car, because a Typhoon is, arguably compact in size compared to everything else that was coming out back then.
right.
I drove one at an event, and I was just blown away by it. And it was kind of like, wait a minute, you can buy a car that's so stealth that kind of nobody knows what it is, that it could be a grocery getter, but in this guise it's not. It's actually really, really fast. And I think that's the fun part, when car guys, car gals figure it out, that that's kind of a sweet spot. And like I said, I think that those cars have a pretty good runway. So but I
Yeah.
also think that the Grand National, I think, is like a uh, 9.8 out of 10 at this point, and on its way to being a 10 out of 10. There wasn't a lot available at certain periods of time in the 70s, not much at all, and then in the early 80s, some people started coming in and making a difference, and those people included. VW with the GTI, late 70s, early 80s, all that sort of stuff. That's when performance kind of peeked its head in again in a different guise. It didn't have to be horsepower; it could be engineering. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Some Concours needs to have a class like the class of 86 or something. Put the
I agree.
GNX next to the GTI,
Yeah.
next to whatever, that'd be a cool
No, I
class to
mean, I
see.
think that I think that we've celebrated JDM a lot at Concours, at a number of different Concours. So it's probably time to refocus at home and do exactly what you say. Some of the interest. I mean, who doesn't love an Omni GLH? That sort of
Goes like
thing.
hell
Yeah, exactly.
and some
Shelby
more. The other one.
Yes, right, exactly. GLHS, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they made what, 99 of them, all black or something like that. I mean, it was a very limited edition. I'm wrong on the number probably, but very limited edition. And a friend of mine bought one new and kept it. And then, I guess he couldn't wait for it to get worth more money, so he started driving it. But it's interesting because I think that, we should probably get back to not only celebrating the JDM cars, but like you said, just getting some Cyclones, getting some Typhoons, getting some GLHSs out there and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Of course, a lot of the cars, the Dodge cars, were also badged as Mitsus as well. So we have the Starion and the Dodge and version of it and everything else. I don't even remember what that was.
That Starion was good looking. I like that Starion.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of great cars from the 80s that, aren't just about the velour seats and the plushness of the interior, which is fun, but also had some real performance for its time. And look, I'm the former owner of a Mazda, RUP, rotary pickup.
Oh,
And
wow.
I owned two of them back in the day. I bought both. Well, I bought one new. Bought one from a government sale. It was a EPA test car, which is hilarious because I don't think anything ever got worse on an EPA test than a Mazda pickup truck. But I mean, I'd love to see. I saw one on Bring a Trailer just sell the other day. I'd love to see a restored one of those out there, or a couple of restored one. Everybody puts the mag wheels on them and does the customization and everything. I'd love to see a stock one. That'd be so much fun to see on a Concours lawn.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I could pass absolutely everything but gas stations. I mean, it was so fast in the 70s that I literally owned the fastest car in the street, for almost everywhere I was because nothing else was fast in the late 70s. And
Oh,
then
that's funny.
the 80s came around and that got changed in about 81, 82. So,
Well, let me ask you one last question about one last
sure.
car. I asked this because I've heard it twice, or not more than twice. It's 63 Corvettes to get you thinking. Split windows, not the Roadster. My question is going to be, are they having a moment right now? Kind of complex because that's the preferred car for resto modders that are selling these things for $600,000. But there was one that just sold, I think I'm bringing a trailer that was an absolute hunk of junk. I mean, it had no wheels, no fenders, no engine, no wrong interior, wrong dash, and it sold for like $72,000. And so that makes a lot of sense. Oh, it doesn't make a lot of sense. That sounds like it's someone who needs one to do a resto mod where they're going to get 600 grand out of it, but who knows? Or it's just two people, whatever reason, had to have that car. Maybe someone, their grandfather bought it new. I don't know. But to get back to my question, are split windows having a moment right now? What's your thought on them?
Well, I'd say Lincoln, early Lincoln Continental, 61, 23, all the way through 67 Lincoln convertibles, same thing. They're both having
Hmm.
kind of the same moment because you got this bifurcated track. You have the, completely restored ones, the NRS Corvettes, NCRS Corvettes, the Bloomington Gold Corvettes, and then the resto mods. I'm not a big fan of taking a classic and making it into resto mod in all cases. I think there's plenty of cases for it. The good news about when you do a Corvette, you can sell the original parts if there's a lot of original parts on them and fund a little bit at least of your resto mod. But you can't argue when somebody's selling these things for $500,000 and $600,000 and $700,000. It does
Right.
not cost that much to build one of those. You're using somebody else's chassis. You're not using the original chassis. You're using a crate motor of some sort, whatever. Yes, it costs a lot to finish the car, but it doesn't cost 600 grand necessarily to finish it. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of money to be made. I had a friend who did a couple Corvettes and did them as resto mods. He basically took the chassis off, sold the chassis, sold the motor, sold a lot of the mechanical parts, and funded the new chassis. This is back in the day. This is a long time ago, and I think he sold both cars for 300,000 each on up, and the people who bought them were happy to have them. I like the fact that the tradition continues on. I think there are a lot of people who like having working air conditioning, working brakes, a 5 speed instead of or a 6 speed instead of a 4 speed or even a 3 speed or an automatic, or some people love the automatic anyway. But I think a personalization on these cars, it's not for me, but I understand it's part of the marketplace.
Yeah.
So I think you basically got two trains running. The thing that the original track and the resto mod track. The thing that kind of bothers me about resto mods are as soon as they're built, that's when they're having their best days,
Hmm.
because all those parts were available in 2025, but will they be available and what people want to use in 2035? So in other words, they have to replace the entire brake system. Are the brakes that are on there, are they no longer serviceable? Are the parts not available? All that sort of stuff. So it's an interesting thing. My favorite is the Broncos. I totally, this will, put some hate mail out there. Why would you take a 65 Bronco and spend $250,000 making it into a really, really super nice 65 Bronco when you can go buy something that looks kind of like it at the Ford dealer and it has all these working bits
Yeah.
to it? I mean, I would concentrate on something else other than the Bronco. I would rather have a 2026 Bronco than a 1966 Bronco. And I know maybe that's just me, but I think they don't scratch the same itch. I get it, but they kind of scratch a similar itch, if that makes any sense, Greg.
No, no, that totally does. And I find it'll be very interesting to see what these resto mods sell for because they're going to be their own unique market. And it's going to be a lot like customs or hot rods. Who built it, and what parts were being used.
Yeah, and I know that there's some builders who are doing just magnificent jobs
Hmm.
on the 66 and 67 Broncos, and they're gorgeous, and you can see the real value in what they're asking for. But like I said, I would probably rather buy three new ones than that. So, uh,
Right, right. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Tell us a little bit about your business and where we can find you next.
Okay, my business is U.S. Appraisal. I'm also the publisher and the founder of the Hagerty Price Guide. Next, I'm going on Monday to an Avanti meet in Palm Springs. So I'll be in Palm Springs, hanging with some of my homies, my Avanti homies. And then let's see. I guess next automotive event is probably going to be Greenwich for me, or big automotive event. Yeah, the weather's getting better, so I'm going to be out driving. I'm going to be out having more fun. I'm going to be out. My goal for the year is less work and more fun. So I'm working real hard at that.
Now, I apologize. I should have started the podcast with this, but congratulations. You got a special car into Pebble Beach, right?
I did, yeah. Those of us who have given me crap for all of my lifetime, I am an Avani guy, a Studebaker Avani guy. I do have an R3, one of nine, and I am over the moon about my car being accepted at Pebble Beach. It'll be the first Avanti ever on the lawn at Pebble Beach, which is a huge honor. It's obviously the top of the top tier, and a genuine world stage. And so I'm thrilled to be taking the car there. We're having some, the old joke is it costs $150,000 to restore a car to 95%, and the next 5% costs $150,000. I know it's a joke and it's not always true, but I'm feeling that pain right now. I had a car that was probably a pretty good 95% or maybe a 92% or something like that, but I don't want to have any embarrassment for anybody's sake at Pebble Beach. So yeah, very much looking forward to August. Very much looking forward. We're going to go on the tour, and hopefully everything goes okay there. And then we're going to go on the field, and it'll be a monumental event in the life of Avantis. Let's put it that way.
So educate us. R1, no supercharger. R2, supercharger. R3, two,
Supercharger,
two
but
superchargers.
no, that's the R4, which never
Never
was a
made.
production car. Yeah, exactly. They made one, but it was not a production car. It is a supercharger with an airbox, so in other words, it's under a little bit more pressure. It's a 304.5 cubic inch engine. It has much hotter cam, for example. It also has a whole bunch of race modifications. It was Andy Granatelli's project. Keep in mind that Andy Granatelli was on the board not only of STP, which was at one time owned by Studebaker, but also on the board of Studebaker. So he was their go-to guy for modifications. And Mr. Indianapolis 500 was also Mr. Indiana when it comes right down to it. And of course, Studebaker was a South Bend, Indiana car company. So kind of all came together with that. So this was a Granatelli project, the R3 Avantis. Unfortunately, they came at the end of production. I think my car was made 2 months and 2 days before they ceased production in the United States. They
Oh,
still
wow.
kept going in Canada for 2 more years, but so there were only nine of them that were finished at the factory, and mine's the first of the nine. So I'm very, very fortunate to have found the car. Very, very fortunate to have been invited to Pebble Beach. I feel like I'm pinching myself because I'm kind of living the dream at this point. I never thought I'd have a car in the field at Pebble, and I got accepted. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah, congratulations. So
It's not me when I say I got accepted. The car got accepted. So it's not about me. It's about the cars. So
that's awesome.
thank you.
Well, thanks so much as always, Dave. And let's do this again in a couple months, and we'll review all the crazy numbers that are about to come out tomorrow.
Sounds good. All right, man. Thank you.
All right. So, like I said, those numbers were before the new release. And so now I do have some updated numbers here. And before I get to the Ferraris, those are the big hitters, the big changes in the marketplace. I did want to kind of do a couple random things. Like basically, I pulled out 10 different cars here that we would typically look at for valuation trends or stuff I find that might be popping in the market. I think the analog era, 2000 to 2015, is about to pop. So I looked at an M3. So yeah, let's check it out. I'm going to run through, I don't know, maybe 10 cars here, and then I'll have 5 Ferraris at the end that were really impacted by the big Bachmann sale and Mecum Kissimmee recently. So let's start with the BMW M3. Now this is a 2006 BMW M3, up 133.9%. Number 1 Concours condition, $128,000. Go down to number 3 condition, 42.7, up 9.8%. Interestingly enough, Laguna Seca Blue is plus 20%. Now I helped my sister find one of these for her husband, and the Laguna Seca Blue was a crazy premium for one of those. All right, next we're looking at the iconic 1970 Datsun 240Z, first year 1970, $140,000 in number 1 Concours condition, up 41.4%. Really impressive. Good condition, up 10.4%. And if you remember, Dave said a lot of the cars in number 4 condition actually declined. And this is a good example, minus 5.3%. Why would that be? Because of the cost of restoration. So it's much easier to enjoy a number 3 car, number 2 car, obviously number 1 car. A number 4 car might not be running or driving, and to get it where it can actually be used is quite expensive. So that's why those are probably declining across the board. All right, the next one's a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. This is another iconic car from the 50s. I picked the fuel-injected version, the convertible version. Number 1 condition, $191,000, minus 2.6%. Strangely, number 2 condition is up 3.7%. I don't quite understand that. But that kind of speaks to the 50s overall. A lot of folks are moving away from those cars. Some of the exceptions would be a car like this, which surprised me it wasn't up at least a little bit. But I think folks will come back to those as they continue to go down. And finally, some people will say, hey, that's a great car. Let's get one of those. All right, car that's in my garage, 1965 Ford Mustang. Hypo convertible. Unfortunately, it's down 1.4%, pretty much across the board, basically flat, slightly down. And then 1970 Iso Grifo, 7 liter. So this is the Corvette powered but European bodied, incredibly cool car. It's basically flat. As you go down in condition, it declines even more. Good condition, minus 8.3%. Minus $50,000 for an automatic transmission. Those are beautiful, beautiful cars. And now let's go to the Lamborghinis. Since we're going to talk about Ferraris, might as well talk about Lamborghinis. The 1987 Lamborghini Countach, it's flat. Number 1 condition, $872,000. Those have been trending up for such a long time. It seems like they have topped out, at least for now. I know the Miuras are still doing tremendously well and increasing in value. And then let's see, 2011 Lexus LFA supercar, up only slightly, 2% across all conditions. And then the iconic 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing. I was surprised. This is flat. Number 1 and number 2 condition. Number 3 down 3.6%, and in number 4 condition down 2%. So these have also surprisingly done tremendously well, considering they're from the 50s and 60s, and continue to do very well at auction. But the trends are showing that they're flat. All right, this is a big one. The 2006 Porsche Carrera GT, up 65%, $3.3 million in number 1 condition, up 64.5% in number 2 condition, up almost 70% in number 3 condition. I don't know that this one includes the record-breaking sale at Broad Arrow. I have a suspicion it does not. because I believe that car just sold when Dave and I did the interview, and they'd already done the numbers for the valuation guide. Now you can see at the bottom it says, note, paint to sample colors may add 50% to 100% to base values depending on how bright or uncommon the color combination was, which was the case at Broad Arrow. It went for, I believe, over $6 million. That will be reflected in the next update in 3 months. Let's get to the Ferraris. So these last five are all about the Ferraris and the impact of the Bachmann sale. So the 1987 Ferrari F40 up 17.4%, number one Concours condition, $4 million, just over $4 million. Now on to the Ferrari F50, 1995, up 52.8% to $8.1 million. And it's actually up even higher in number three condition, number four condition up 63.1%. And the numbers get even crazier. Let's move on to the 2003 Ferrari Enzo. This is the one that made all the headlines by selling for $18 million. Number one condition, $10.3 million, up 112.4%. Even in number four condition, up 124.1%. Insane numbers. But that's not the biggest increase in Ferraris. That would have to go to the 1984 Ferrari GTO. Technically not called 288 GTO, but we called it that way just to get it confused with the other GTOs. Up 142.5% in number one Concours condition, $9.7 million. Insane. So some really crazy results there. And I will do a deep dive on the market trends here in the next few weeks. So be sure to stay tuned. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and thanks for reading. And I'll talk to all of you next week on the Collector Car Podcast.